University of Manitoba campuses are located on original lands of Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and on the homeland of the Métis Nation. We respect the treaties that were made on these territories. We acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past, and we dedicate ourselves to move forward in partnership with Indigenous communities in the spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. I'd like to welcome you all here today as we reflect on this theme of riding the waves, reflecting on the 2 years of pandemic. My name is Reverend Helen Holbrook, and I'm the chaplain here at St. John's College. And we will begin with an opening smudge led by our elder, Norman Mead.
Allowing me to comment to part of the today and ceremony and to light up this light this morning, today, to be thankful for each and every one of you, and to be thankful that the Creator is with us here this morning. The resilience that each of us has over the last 2.5 years has been given to us by the Spirit of God. And I led this much this morning. I'm going to walk around with it so that you can all feel the presence as we light up this much. I'm going to go around the room, and I'm going to come back as much as over here in our beautiful view up there. It's my, I'm going to be praying as I take this mic around. I'm going to go behind you, front of you, or beside you. And as I go around and lead it in our prayer today, I want you to know that when we come together in spirit, we use this much to send our prayers up to the Creator God, who is here present with us in this sacred place. And for that, we give thanks today. Do you hear this much? When you smile, you are giving back to Creator those things that are heavy on your heart. You're also giving thanks for the strength that the Creator has provided to each and every one of us. We ought to be thankful all the time, but this time of the year, we're looking for balance in each of our lives because it's the springtime, it's a new time, a fresh time of the year where we look for balance, strength, and loss. And this morning, there's a ceremony that helps us find that balance in life. To cleanse our bodies and our minds and our spirits in a way that the Creator knows that all of the things that we went through during the COVID time, that we can let those things go and be thankful that the Creator has covered us with His love and His care and watched over us every step of the way. This is what we give thanks for today, to let to cleanse our bodies and our minds and our spirits. I will say this, that the women have special spirits that can bring life into this world for us as humans. And in that, we give thanks for that life today and what it brings us. It brings us a special gift from the Creator. And that's why we come today in this life that we have done. So if you would thank you, God, for leading us today.
Thank you for leading us in that ceremony. Good morning, everyone. My name is Edgar French, and I am the spiritual care coordinator for the University. I'm delighted that I can say with some of you here, it's good to be with you in person. Mary Oliver, in her poem, Wild Geese, reminds us that our lives endure, that they go on despite the seasons of hardship and pain inflicted upon us. She writes, "Tell me about your despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees and rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese high in the clean blue air are heading. Whoever you are, no matter how long, the world offers itself to your imagination. Calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and extended, over and over announcing your place in the family of things." Oliver invites us to recognize that there is persevering strength in the bonds of connection found in the world around us, in nature and in one another. Coming to campus these days, Oliver's words have rung especially true for me, as we've been greeted by these harsh and exciting calls. So today, on the second anniversary of a worldwide pandemic, subsequent closing of our campuses, we gather as a community to remind each other that we are not alone in our distress. The pandemic and its onslaught of 4 waves have inhibited our ability to enjoy campus life as we knew it. Study, work, connections, friendships. And while it is true that we have shared bond and experienced suffering, shaped. Variants, if you will, have not constituted viruses like alpha, delta, but variances of experience. Variances of emotion, variances in the resources we've had to meet these challenges, variance in the wave that has hit. Our intent today is to invite you all to expression to our individual experiences of the pandemic, the range of feelings, full palette of colors, the diversity of stories that, in some way, announce our place in the family of things. I'd like now to invite 4 members of our university community to voice and share how 2 years of pandemic life have impacted them. What particular wave of emotion and experience has washed over them? Azizul Hakim, a graduate student in the Faculty of Arts and majoring in political science, will share on the wave of anger. Dr. Heidi Marks, Associate Dean of Undergraduate Affairs, Faculty of Arts, Professor in the Department of Religion, will share on the wave of grief. Eliud Cavalcante, Director of Campus Ministry at St. Paul's College, will speak to us about the wave of anxiety. And Michelle Collins, Lutheran chaplain, will give voice to that elusive sentiment, cautious optimism.
Hi, my name is Mohammad Azizul Hakim, and I'm currently studying at the University of Manitoba. I'm a master's student of political studies. So I basically came here last September, and the classes were held in remote, and it was supposed to be going back to the campus, but unfortunately it couldn't because of the Omicron variant. So which led to a lot of frustration for me. And another thing is that I was quite isolated because I'm new to this country and I got quite a few people. So I wasn't able to meet new people and make some social connections. And it was really frustrating. And I wanted to study in person because I thought it would have been a more better situation if I got the opportunity to study in person. But nevertheless, it couldn't have happened due to the pandemic, and it was like quite hard not to be able to socialize and know new people, just to live alone. So what I did is that I reached out to the university and talked to student support worker, and I've got excellent support from my support worker, and he has done a tremendous job in helping me cope with the situation. And in this situation as a student, like I didn't know that I have so much patience like before, and it taught me that I have greater ability than what I believe originally, and uh, things are going back to normal, I suppose. So yeah, it's a wonderful. I would not say wonderful, but it was a terrible experience. But I managed to learn something along the way. Thank you so much.
My wave is sadness and grief. Grief is very difficult to talk about, to define, to countenance, and to fully grapple with. But I will try because I want to honor your sadness and mine, your grief and mine. And the only way I can really think of doing so is to enter into our collective losses together for a moment. We live in a society that at the best of times doesn't leave much space or time for grief and grieving people. But now we find ourselves in a situation where we've all lost something over the past 2 years. Some of us many things. And all of this on top of the ordinary everyday losses that are already so difficult to mourn. We can't evade or avoid our sadness and sense of loss anymore. If we try to, as we know, grief will find us in other ways. And if we are to feel joy, pleasure, happiness, and human connection again, we have to be willing to feel this. We have to make space and time for grief. And that's what we're doing today together. We're remembering what we've been through, and part of what we remember are our losses. So I ask you, what are you grieving? What have you lost? I'll remember with you some of the things that I've lost, and hopefully you can remember with me your own losses. I lost connection with my parents and sister because of geographical distance and differences of opinion about vaccines? Do you miss your family? Have you lost family and connection with family? We lost my son's father just last month, not to COVID, but to cancer. However, we didn't know if we could travel to be with him while he was dying. We didn't know if my son could see him in hospital. We didn't know if we could say goodbye in person. And although we managed to do all of those things, following all the protocols and testing requirements, added stress and complication during a very difficult time. Did you lose someone you love far away? Did someone you know and love die alone? I turned 50 on December 24th. I celebrated just with my son on Christmas Eve. It was both very lonely and lovely. Did you miss an important celebration, a graduation, a birthday, a family reunion, a promotion, a retirement, a rite of passage or milestone of another sort? I miss my friends so much, but I also lost friends. They just disappeared into isolation, sometimes into depression, and couldn't reach them. And sometimes I got lost too. Did you lose friendships? And although it might sound strange, given how much I miss my friends and my lively, vibrant, sustaining connections with them, I also felt and feel keenly the loss of solitude, especially during the times when I was homeschooling my son as a single mother and trying to work full-time. Did you ever just want to be alone for a bit but couldn't find space or time? Did you ever feel the strange combination of deep loneliness and a wish for the restful and restorative space of solitude? Then there are all the smaller sensorial experiences I miss and mourn the loss of. The smell of my mother's baking, the sound of more than one child playing in the backyard, the smiles of my students when I crack a joke in class. Black boxes are a source of grief for your teachers. But we understand, we really do, that all of us are showing up in different ways and living in difficult circumstances and doing the best we can. I miss shaking hands and I miss hugs. These are my losses, the things I grieve. I welcome you to add yours to this pile, this heap, this at times crushing mountain, if I haven't spoken to them. Know that I feel with and for you. Know that I honor your grief and sadness, and know that I move forward in trust with you, that we will all also feel joy and happiness together again.
Lockdown, quarantine, pandemic, unprecedented. Just a few of the plethora of words we had to learn as we embarked on this journey towards the unfamiliar new reality COVID-19 was bringing upon us. Though we were all together, our feelings and experiences with changes could not have been further apart. Anxiety and fear, familiar emotions around such situations, started building up and occupying more and more space in our bodies. Again, we all experienced those emotions in different ways and intensity. My own experience during the pandemic may not have been unique on a global level, but probably it was in my small local community. Having lost my in-laws just a few months earlier, I stepped into this new reality in grief. A few months into the pandemic, a friend and co-worker of 9 years died. And as days followed, anxiety and grief just grew as relatives, friends, and colleagues here and abroad died. From complications of COVID-19, natural causes, and other ailments. However, each loss increased the sadness. Anxiety, grief, and fear reached the breaking point in my body, and I could not keep it within. This mix of negative emotions had taken over my personal and work life. As students, staff, and others in the community would contact me to share their own struggles and losses. I knew I had to let it go, as anxiety would manifest itself every time the phone rang, open emails, anything. What to say, how to convey care and advice on what to do. It was time for a break, to slow down the roller coasters of thoughts and emotions. It was time for self-care, deep breaths, spending time being present every morning, acknowledging that this was the start of a brand new day full of possibilities. It was time to spend time in prayer. Walks with my dog, favorite music, texts, and poems, over the phone and online, long conversations with family and friends. Caring for my plants kept me going, and soon, joy, love, and peace started occupying more space in my body as the days went by. As knowledgeable and well-equipped we think we are to deal with the intemperies of life, sometimes in our lives, it is important to let those emotions show their colors and shades publicly, so we can help ourselves and others to heal and to grow.
What is hope? Hope is stepping into a new job, into a new community, and then the pandemic. It's forming relationships and making connections through Zoom, TikTok, Instagram, and even old school email and text messages that aren't everything they might one day be, but they're also not nothing. Hope is joining an online club, class, or training session, build on skills, gain new insight, and develop competencies for the work you want to do, even if it's different than the work you're actually doing. Hope is leaning into traditions and rituals that look different, but still offer meaning and reflection for the complex realities of the human experience. It's telling stories from generations that have gone before us to remind us to extend grace to yesterday, hold today with open hands, and allow tomorrow to surprise us. Hope is shouting at the clouds, screaming into the pillows, signing the petitions, and writing the letters, because we can do better. We must do better. Hope is lighting candles, shedding tears, and sharing stories that hurts like hell, but also testifies to the incredible power of life and of love. Hope planting the seed, even though winter has to come before spring every time. Hope is reaching out for help, because who I am today is not who I might be tomorrow, and there might be more to me than what I can believe in this moment. Hope is exhaling and inhaling and exhaling again. Caution, release, concern, celebration. Hope is the force that moves us through the one into the other so that we continue on the journey and find our way forward into all that we cannot precisely define, but all that we yearn for, dream about, and envision as possible. Where we were 2 years ago is not where we are today. Where we will be 2 years from now is not where we are today. And so we hope, and so we step forward. We exhale and inhale and exhale again.
Sometimes the exercise of reviewing where it is that we've been can be a powerful testimony to the strength that we've exhibited, our ability to inhale and to exhale. Manitoba officially reported its first case on March 12, 2020. A state of emergency was declared on March 20th and implemented its first lockdown on April 1st, with the ordering the closure of all non-essential businesses. In comparison to other provinces, case counts remained relatively low in Manitoba throughout the spring and summer months, with the province beginning to lift some of its health orders on May 4th. By September 2020, the province had begun to develop a harsher second wave, leading to restrictions being re-implemented in parts of the province and the city of Winnipeg. And by November 12th, all of Manitoba was under the highest critical red level of the province's tier-based response. While some restrictions were eased in early 2021, remaining under that critical tier, strong restrictions on gatherings, retail capacity, non-essential sectors were reintroduced in May due to a harsher third wave. The province's healthcare system was overwhelmed, requiring some to be sent out of province. By June 2021, the province began to lift some of its restrictions due to vaccination uptake and progress. However, once again, with a variant of Omicron, the province reintroduced restrictions in gatherings late 2021, hence the fourth wave. So fast track to February and to today, and the province announces to have all orders, including proof of vaccination requirements, mask mandates, removed by mid-month. And the story continues to unfold. We hear of lockdowns in China, surging cases in Europe, and so we breathe and we exhale and we hope for the best, knowing that we are capable of adjusting in the face of the unpredictability of the future.
What a range of emotions we have gone through. What a range of experiences. It has deeply affected our community and our relationships. And me personally, I started here about a year ago in November when we were knee-deep in lockdown. And at the same time, a few months later, I was hired as a casual at St. Boniface Hospital. And so I got to see quite a range of people's experiences and emotions and the reality right there in healthcare. And so what is really important, although in a way it's been very traumatic as a society. And I think the temptation might be, oh, let's just move and get on with it. But I do believe in the great wisdom of Celtic people who often say, if you do not name it, then it gets stronger and stronger. and it will, in the end, break you. It'll still there. So it is important for us to name all the things that we have gone through in these 2 years. And as Edgar was sharing all of that history, I am recalling, remembering a lot of my own emotions and experiences, and plus some of the positive ones. So this weekend, I had a retreat with the student council, and I thought it would be a good idea for them to work on their own timelines, and you can do this at home, and to go over those 2 years and to pinpoint certain experiences, some of them positive, some of them negative. As one student said, I actually realized I could like my family. It was quite a shock. And so that could be a positive experience. I was shocked to see whole families walking around the street and enjoying a walk. It was a bit of a shock. And so we put up here on all of our waves, starting with the first, the second, and the upside down third wave. That was me. I accidentally reversed that, but hey, everyone's world was turned over. And then the fourth, everyone picked the white one because it was all snow, right? Remember that? We still have that out there. It was just interesting what people had put on this timeline. For the first wave, we got school goes online, and then happy pets because everybody was at home. Now the pets are going through anxiety because everyone's gone back to work. Then someone, the reality of vaccination fights. Someone mentioned family members, the tenseness between family members in terms of the understanding about vaccinations and about COVID. I mean, that hit my family too, because my husband's family are very, there was a lot of tension in the discussions there, and it was a very unfortunate circumstance that my husband's brother-in-law died of COVID. And so that was a bit traumatic as well. And in all, and then of course you go on here, this is our fifth, we're not too sure what's going on. But someone said, back to reality, and I don't care anymore. Someone's just tired of all of this. You got to name it, that's important. And chemistry over speaking question mark. And I made some paintings for the first time in a few years. Very interesting in the sense that maybe with the last couple of years, a lot of things go on and we're so numb and overwhelmed that we can't even do those things that we enjoy, right? That is mourning, right? And when we start to get into those things again, then we become alive. So maybe that's what's happening here. If you notice, it was so neat, Edgar, when you were sharing about the geese, you could hear them outside the chapel. I don't know if anyone picked that up online, but what an example. Life has come back, and there's challenges, and the geese will leave us with a few gifts where we walk, but that is part of it. So I do have a few things if people afterwards want to write a few things and name them on the 4 waves. But this is living history. We have been a part of it. They will be talking about it for years. It has changed us. It has changed our student body. And the greatest thing that we're still grappling with is trying to reconcile and come to terms with our loss of community over that time. One point, I was with the child of a family member who had died. And she asked me, how do you do it? How do you deal with the fact that your parent has died? How do you get through it? And it's not a plan. It's not an app. It's not a download. I said, one moment at a time. And feel everything in that moment. And share what you're feeling. So I know as we go into this sky here of the unknowns, this is where we're going to have to do a lot of work. This is where we're going to have to listen, come to terms with our anxiety, which is very true, and our hope. It's there sitting with us, right? And some of our sadness and grief that may come up as a burst, where we will remember something that we really missed, whether it was a visit to somebody that we knew in a nursing home and we couldn't go in during the lockdowns. So with that, I invite all of you, we have a few recordings, and they will be from various reflections representing the School of Nursing, one of our U of M alumni, Kirsten Bonito. And then the School of Medicine will be represented by Chris Moskal. He's a fourth year UGME student. And then from U of M Counseling, Linda Churchill. And then administration, Allison Aber, St. John's College warden. And Lori Schnar, she's from Student Affairs VP Students. These are all recordings. And Tino unfortunately couldn't make it. He was and very disappointed. And then we'll move on. So just to take this opportunity to view these sharings.
Hello, my name is Kirsten Bonito. I've been a nurse for 26 years. I obtained my Bachelor of Nursing from the University of Manitoba in 1996. I've been in critical care since 2003, and presently I am working in Southern Ontario. The workload during the COVID pandemic on myself and my colleagues is the highest it's ever been, and the emotional toll has been a considerable factor as well. The public we are working with is engaged via internet and social media like they've never been before. The media can contain good information from credible resources and also a lot of false information from unreliable resources. Most of our clientele are pretty positive about their experience with us. And we unfortunately experience some very occasional negativity from the public based on the influences of media. Visiting policies at our facility had to continually be adjusted and changed to isolate and stop the spread of COVID. And one of the most difficult things my colleagues and I have tried to do from a psychosocial standpoint is to facilitate communication between patients and their families at end of life remotely. Video calling technology has been a blessing in that regard, and I'm glad we were able to offer that. Unfortunately, there were many instances when we, the staff, were the only people at the patient's bedside at their time of death. We received interfacility transfers when other facilities were overwhelmed. In some circumstances, there was also a language barrier, which further complicated things. And despite the pain and the stress of it, I saw my colleagues do amazing things during this crisis. I think we learned how to better handle a similar situation should it arise in the future. It highlighted the need for calm, rational leadership. It is very difficult not to show negativity and stress in these circumstances. I think I would say to a new nurse looking at critical care as a specialty that it always has been and continues to be my favorite area to work in. Unexpected circumstances will occur and you will be expected to adapt, but what is important is that you use your experience to improve care in the future. Obtaining proper qualifications to work in the area is key. And for senior nurses in the ICU, kind, competent mentorship with honest, constructive feedback is very valuable for people entering the area. Thank you all for listening. I hope this was helpful.
Good morning. My name is Chris Moskal. I'm a fourth year medical student here at the University of Manitoba and senior stick at the Manitoba Medical Students Association. I just wanted to thank you for your time today and allowing me this opportunity to reflect on the past 2 years of the COVID-19 pandemic as a medical student. Well, these past 2 years have not been easy for any of us medical students. Our third and fourth years have been busy in the hospitals, treating patients with COVID-19, seeing patients at the bedside when families were not allowed to visit due to widespread community transmission. Our first and second year students have not been able to network and meet one another in a faculty that traditionally relies very heavily on the collegiality and counting on one another to support each other. While these past 2 years have not at all been easy, we're looking forward with cautious optimism and gratitude. We want to thank the physicians who have taken time out of their schedules, even in a pandemic, to continue to teach us and mentor us and guide us while we pursue this profession. We're also grateful that the road ahead looks cautiously optimistic and that there may be brighter days coming. We are going to be entering a field that has a lot of work to do. There's going to be a lot of post-COVID recovery. There's going to be a lot of getting back to normalcy that needs to happen and a lot of backlog that needs to be addressed and caught up on. And here at the University of Manitoba, our medical students are up to the challenge and we're ready to do our part when called upon. So thank you all for coming today, and we're looking forward to brighter days ahead.
This is a lamentable time in world history. And so this today is my lament. I lament the many losses due to COVID-19, losses too numerous to name, the loss of loved ones, the loss of the capacity to gather for public mourning rituals, the loss of jobs, the loss of the capacity to visit and or care for loved ones who were ill. Too many losses to name. I lament the unspeakable horror of the Russian oligarchs' invasion of the Ukraine that even Russian citizens abhor. I lament that war is happening anywhere at all. I lament that war creates refugees, a crisis, a war crime. I lament climate disasters brought on by global warming that have produced such hardship for entire communities. I lament the horrors of thousands of Indigenous children perishing in residential schools, their graves a silent testimony for our racist roots. I lament the horror of George Floyd's murder by police and the evils of systemic racism it not only exposed but re-exposed. I lament the mass shootings that have taken place in this world, thinking especially today of the many losses in Nova Scotia. I lament mass shootings everywhere, anywhere. I lament the algorithmic corruptions of social media that had people believing and spreading misinformation and division. I lament hunger and homelessness brought on by economic injustice that is resolvable through political will and fair taxation. I lament that much of what I've just stated has taken place during the pandemic, and the pandemic was bad enough. So much of the world's problems are preventable, and that, today, I most deeply lament.
Hi, everyone. I'm Allison Abra, and I'm the warden here at St. John's College. And so before I open my remarks, I just want to welcome you all here and say how happy we are to have you physically in our chapel and in our building, which I think speaks to the recovery from the pandemic in a very specific way, but also to welcome those of you who are with us virtually, since that is also something we have mastered and I think is a new way of creating community that we'll continue to enjoy. So I'm the warden of St. John's, but I'm also a historian. And I feel like I have experienced the pandemic in two different ways for that reason. There's been the immediate personal experience that I have had, that my family, friends, colleagues, and communities have had. But I've also spent a lot of time reflecting on the crisis in terms of its place on the timeline of world history and how it is compared to other crises, global war, and of course, other pandemics. When this pandemic started, I was living in the United States, but my family was all up here. And that had never really seemed like a big problem before. It was easy to jump on a plane, they weren't that far away. But so there was something really shocking about that moment where they closed the Canada-US border in the first wave of the pandemic. And I remember just, checking on flights from New Orleans, which was my closest airport, to Winnipeg, and there just weren't any because Winnipeg was not one of the cities accepting flights. That was just a really jarring moment. I was eventually able to visit by way of a 24-hour solo road trip and 2-week quarantine. But I think that experience of being so cut off from my family initially really got me thinking. I remember one time in the summer of 2020 when I got up here, being at the family cottage and swimming with my nephew and thinking, why don't I just live here all the time? Why am I in Mississippi? Then this job opportunity came along to become the warden at St. John's College, which certainly I would have been interested in had there not been a pandemic. But I really think the mental shift that occurred because of these 2 years made me all the more ready and grateful to be able to return to my hometown and also to my alma mater of St. John's and the University of Manitoba. And so by the third wave, I was back in quarantine, but that was because I had moved home and I was very glad to be here. In terms of the pandemic's historical effects, I've been thinking about this in a couple of ways. One is in terms of how people across time and place have processed and withstood fear, trauma, and grief, the same fear, trauma, and grief we have all been experiencing. A few years ago, I wrote a book about social dance, where part of the focus was how the British people danced as a form of escapism, but also as a display of fortitude and defiance during the Second World War, and particularly the Blitz, dancing in bomb shelters or in the bomb-ravaged streets as a way of saying to the Germans, you haven't beaten us yet. And so for that reason, I was very struck during the first wave of the pandemic by the way people again used dancing in similar ways. There were a lot of, you may recall, virtual or socially distanced dance parties where people would DJ in their street and everybody would join in. Lots of YouTube clips of people doing, dance numbers or TikTok dance challenges. And of course, the very powerful image of dancing hospital workers, the place in Ontario where everybody danced whenever someone came off a ventilator or patients came out of hospitals and danced to show that they were still there. In times of historic crisis, I think that dancing offers a very visible and whole-bodied display of our continued existence and our resolve, and it enables people to dance through some of that fear, suffering, and grief, and expresses their hope and determination to survive. And then, of course, it's also just fun, right? The other thing I've been thinking about as a historian is about this pandemic in terms of its long-term historical effects and possibilities for change. After the Black Death ravaged medieval Europe, labor shortages enabled peasants to advocate for increased wages and better working and living conditions. In the wake of the 1919 flu pandemic, the 1920s witnessed new political rights for many, women's increasing social independence, and the artistic and cultural flowering of the Roaring '20s. Also a dance craze, incidentally. Historians also know that these were never permanent changes and that the path of history is not one of straightforward progress. In fact, as we have seen and as many have talked about today, pandemics and their aftermaths can introduce new social and political tensions, as we've seen over the vaccine debates or the racial tensions across the world. But these are also pandemics are also a massive rupture that create possibilities for progress, and the chance to address social inequalities. So we don't know what's going to happen yet. As Helen's timeline shows, we're still in that final push, hopefully final push. But basically, I'm going to be watching and I'm going to be hoping that some real positive change can come out of what has been a difficult and challenging period for us all. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lori Schnarr, Vice Provost Students at the University of Manitoba, and it's really great to be here. The president is very sorry that he's unable to attend today and wanted me to extend warm greetings to all of you and to express his gratitude to those who organized this gathering. Our university community was hoping last year's COVID anniversary event was the last, but here we are, cautiously optimistic that today will indeed be the last time we mark another year of this pandemic. Without doubt, the past 2 years have been challenging. For me, it was particularly difficult to be so far away from my son in Ottawa and my family and friends in Ontario, while also navigating a new role here at the university, a brand new city, and all of the challenges and opportunities that this period of remote working and learning delivered. But over time, we settled into this new reality, and while it seemed that challenges we faced were insurmountable at times, we rolled up our sleeves, we dug in, we adapted, we persevered. And most of all, we had hope. Hope that our loved ones would be safe, that our healthcare system would be okay, that science would prevail, and that before too long, we would once again be doing the things that we love to do with the people that we love. One of my son's favorite characters in the Harry Potter book series is Albus Dumbledore, headmaster of the wizarding school Hogwarts. During the very first dinner of the school year, Dumbledore offered some sage advice. Happiness can be found even in the darkest of times if only one remembers to turn on the light. Dumbledore reminds us that we own our happiness, that we can overcome the tough times and keep hope alive in our hearts when we do things that give us joy and connect with those who care for us, love us, and support us. During the past 2 years, we found or rediscovered strategies for remaining grounded, for retaining a sense of balance, and for maintaining connections, for keeping hope alive. As we transition back to in-person learning and working, it will be important for us to hold on to those activities, those practices and routines that worked really well for us. That is an opportunity that this pandemic presented to us that we shouldn't lose sight of. Of course, some of those strategies didn't come to us automatically. Some were established over time, were the product of trial and error, or the result of meaningful conversations with friends, family, elders, and trusted staff and faculty. I am eternally grateful to the counselors, advisors, chaplains, elders, and spiritual care team, and the strong network of support here at the University of Manitoba who helped students to feel hopeful, to remember to turn on the light during these very challenging times. It is a privilege to work with this team of caring humans every day. Going forward, I know that some of you feel anxious about the return to campus. You might feel out of practice when it comes to being social again. Know that you aren't alone. We are a strong, caring, compassionate community. I encourage you to extend a helping hand if you see that someone is struggling, to continue to show patience, grace, and kindness during this period of transition, to understand that each person's journey is their own, and as always, to reach out if you need support yourself. I am very much looking forward to seeing everyone on campus again. The lights are on, the doors are wide open, and we can't wait to welcome everyone back. Thank you for providing this opportunity for me to offer my reflections. Take care, everyone.
This is a time we'll take our time, an opportunity to remember. I have about, I think, 60 candles. I think I went where we'll remember for each candle about 30 lives that have died over the COVID time. And right now we stand at 1,731. That's a number. There's a story behind each person. There are loved ones who are hurting. There are people who may have not lived in this province and never got to say goodbye. And as I said previously, I got to be present for some of the people we are remembering as my work as a chaplain at a hospital. So it was a good reminder to me, there is a story, a person, a relationship. So as we light these candles together, I would like to invite all of you, either here present or who are online, remember maybe someone that you heard of who died, or remember some of the things that you missed, or the visits, or the birthday celebrations. Last year, for so many, it was grad, high school, colleges. For some, there are students who have been attending for a year who have not set foot on campus, who are missing that opportunity to experience another part of their adult life in another place, on a campus, and meeting new people. There are so many things to remember. So as we do this in silence, take that opportunity to remember. These candles represent so many lives, so many experiences, so much that cannot be named in a word. But we lift them up and we know outside of here, there are so many more that we wish to remember. And so I have one candle that represents the impact on all Manitobans, which are too numerous, and I think we have named so much of them today. And then, of course, we remember the world's losses. I don't even know what the numbers are at this point in time. And we also remember the losses that partially are due because the vaccines could not go to those countries. There were so many problems, and I know in one case, some got vaccines that were about to go bad in a month. And with the transportation issues, just to getting it to people. So on that count, there's so much more we need to do because there will be more deaths through the world. So remember all of those. We are very fortunate that we can get a third dose now, when many only have one, if one. And then we have the big one. It's just interesting, it was just one of the candles here, it has 4 waves on it. Those are our hopes, and that is one thing. I always remember hope. I don't know if everyone is familiar with Pandora, the Greek legend where Pandora opened the box. She was told not to, and then all the terrible things in the world, disease and war, came out. And what was left in the box? Hope. And hope is always left. And hope is about future making. It's not, I'm going to win $1 million tomorrow. Well, I could, but hope is future making, that we can move on. And it helps us, that little seed of hope can help us into falling into despair. So there is hope for this world. There always has been. You look, as Allison told at history, it was hope that brought many generations along. And that is one thing humans are really good at. So may this big candle, the big hope, be represented at our hopes. And I invite people to think right now of all their hopes. The hopes that have given them life. I remember about a year ago there was such hope for a vaccine, and it did not. Interestingly, that candle hasn't been lit since we haven't had in-person services for such a long time, or big ceremonies. So here it is. And let us take a moment of silence as we reflect on what we have lost, what has changed, and where our hopes are. We are thankful that we had this opportunity to gather, that we have a place, a safe place, a place where we can work that can honor all of this and give us space to name all of these things. And there is a reminder that if there is somebody who needs to speak to somebody, we have the spiritual care department, we have counseling, your staff, there's also EAP. So don't be alone in what you have shared, because we've all shared today in our hearts and minds what these 2 years have meant to us. And we'd like to invite two of our students, our music students, Alice Mcgregor and Kathleen Murphy, who will come up and sing us a song of hope called "O Lovely Peace." And as they're gathering, a big thank you to all those who are present, who shared, to our IT team. Thank you so much for all the prep. They were here early this morning. There's wires everywhere. And thank you to all those who contributed online. And a thank you to all those watching, and to those who may watch this later as well. Thank you, and what a beautiful, celebrated, lovely song. Sorry, it was a little bit verklempt. That was such a beautiful thing, and let us continue on our journey as hope guides us, as healing informs us, and as wisdom. That is what we will follow in these coming days. Thank you again for joining us today.